This technique of using something's own matte to create a rim shade is very, very common. And once you've spotted it, you'll see it everywhere. Here's a nice way to easily give it just that bit of hand-drawn touch to iron those bits out, give it a bit more depth. All right, short answer, if you just copy exactly what you see here, you're good to go. Long answer, good hello. Welcome to Onion Skin. Now, absolutely ages ago, I made a simple video about this basic shading technique here. And I've received a lot of feedback since that it did help get people comfortable with Toon Boom's nodes for the first time. And that's great. However, it can lead to this noticeably simulated effect. And you start to see this effect everywhere where it looks like shadows are being made from the cropped remains of a character's own mask. So I've done a deliberately obnoxious drawing here with lots of awful spiky bits to really point this out. And oh my God, look at his hand. It also tends to treat a character as a singular volume. Anything on the interior, look, it's no good. Any embellishments or drop shadows, like it's just not really made for that. Sure, you could engineer that with the nodes, but it becomes so complicated so quickly that passes the point where it's actually still being helpful, you know, like might as well just do the entire thing hand-drawn. So surely there's got to be a happy middle ground. And there is, like everything else, it usually turns out to be some form of hybrid, where the filter is doing about 80% of the work, but we can still get stuck in there with our brush and do some hand-drawn touch-ups to really give it some polish. So that's what we're going to do. All you need to get started is the node view open with a drawing on the stage. Doesn't really matter what it is. If it's something that has obnoxious parts like hands or hair, something problematic, that'd be good. Get your nodes looking something like this, completely vertical, composite and a display, no need for a right node right now. And as a bit of a refresher, we need to pull out a second chord, and what this does is create two copies. We now have two Sonics directly layered on top of one another. We can do different things with the different threads. So pressing enter in the node view brings up the search bar. We can search for the apply peg transformation. This thing lets us brute force a peg to be underneath an image, whereas normally they need to go on top, right? So Control P will generate a peg, and this needs to go into the leftmost port like that. So now we've got one version of Sonic that is normal and one version which picks up whatever these coordinates will be. So using the position tool, I can pick them up, move them somewhere else. And we do indeed see that we have two layers now coming from the same origin. So we want to do something with this second piece. We want to use the character as his own matte. So if I place it something like this, you can see this sliver, this bit sort of sticking out the back. That's going to be our base highlight. So pressing enter in the node view again, this time we want to get out a cutter, the standard masking agent. Thing that we want to be revealed goes through the dot, and the mask represents the thing we want to use to cut away from it. So the regular character, that goes through the one with the dot, and our displaced one goes through the mask. And as you can see, it leaves behind only the parts where they weren't touching, moving them around like so. This is already more advanced than the tone because it's simpler, and therefore we can do more things with it. You may remember with the tone, it has a whole bunch of stuff sort of built in. Radius, intensity, color it is, its blending mode built in. It's convenient, sure, but I find it a bit of a shame because it kind of teaches a bad habit. If I were to do something like make it transparent, I'm all good. But if I wanted to change this blending mode from whatever this preset happens to be to something else, I'd be a bit stuck. But that's okay, because the tone node is pretty much just a big fancy preset made of other smaller parts that already exist. So if we just pause and have a think about the individual parameters that we want, just go get them, put them together, and end up with our very own version of this. Make it transparent, you go get one. If we wanted to make it blurry, you just go get it. Now, before we proceed, basically every effect from here requires render view to be able to see it. So we've got the gray flower and the green flower. Go to the green flower, we get something like that. Not very helpful against blacks, so let's also get out a color card, pop that in at the back like so. And now we can see our slither pretty clearly. So every string is essentially a little playground in which we can do stuff. What happens if we put the blur in different locations? This is what it looks like after it's been cut. It blurs everywhere. If I put it on one of the threads beforehand, I get, oh, that's interesting. It blurs on the outside of the character. And if I put the blur here, ooh, okay, so we've got a hard edge and that softens inward, that's probably what we want, right? So let's find out. What we actually want right now is a color scale, because I'm just going to dim the color a little bit. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, if you're new to it, weaving nodes into a pre-existing thread is by holding the Alt or the Option key. By holding Alt down, the node will sort of weave itself through pre-existing threads. Make sure you let go of the mouse before you let go of Alt, and the connection will hold. I'm going to adjust the color scale value from 1 down to 0.5, and you'll see it'll get significantly darker. And I might reduce the green and the red to 0.8 as well to make it even more blue. A and D on the keyboard is activate and deactivate, so you can see the color scale turning on and off there. If I was to turn off the cutter as well, we would see the entire character come back, and indeed the entire character is tinting. So here's the exciting part. With everything back on, how do we get the original character revealed underneath again? All we're going to do is pull out one more cord that goes all the way around to the back, plug that into the composite, and there we go. We've now got one layer of the character and another layer of just what we want to keep in shadow. Now that it's set up, have a bit of a play with the settings as they currently lay. So like this peg can be used to increase distance, maybe see if there's any other effects that you want to plug in. This is what the blur looks like afterwards. This is what it looks like on the right? But right here, oh, that's pretty nice. And does that make sense as to why that's happening? If I disconnect that and send it straight to the composite, you'll see what I mean. We don't need that for today though, because what we've come here for is this bit, this obnoxious stuff here. I hate this stuff. It shows up all over the place. Like I want that to be shadow all the way across. I want to have some shade along here. I mean, what's happening with these fingers? This is pretty gross. So here's what we're going to do. Under the render flower, click and hold on that, and you can change it from render view to matte view. And this will just show you only black and white based on what is solid, what is there and what is transparent. At the moment, we've got a color card and the character, so the whole screen is just white. But if I take my display and go exploring with it, say, look at just the color scale, and that's it, we see now only the slither existing and nothing else. So if we think about it, this shape is what's creating our shadow. If we can modify this shape in any particular way, we'd be able to do anything we want. But at the moment, this shape is just being made by, that. It sure would be nice if I could just like paint onto it. You know what I mean? So you know what? That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to create two new drawing layers. There's Control R for drawing. We're going to have two, add and subtract. Put these side by side. We need to figure out where do they plug in so we can either paint with our brush and it will add white or it will remove white. How could we do that? Well, perhaps I could put a composite here, and that allows me to take two threads into my initial cutter. That one's working, hooray. Maybe if we get another cutter out, put that before the first one, and put our add to that. Hey, that's kind of working, or sort of. So daisy chaining cutters like this is relatively effective. We see this happen quite a bit. But what I wanted to entertain you with today was the matte composite. So rather than having composites and cutters and things getting overly complicated, we're going to get out the matte composite. So this thing can be pretty confusing to work with, which is why I've brought us over to the matte render. Then we'll be able to see a little bit more clearly what's going on. First, our regular shape as before. The subtract goes in nicely, doing its thing. And the add, well, we want that to do the opposite. So these little plus and minus symbols here, we can change the inversion of each individual input. Double clicking at once and double clicking again, we get, there we go, minus. Hell yeah. So subtract and add. And being composites, if I switch these around, it's just like any other layer. I can prioritize what's going to come on top. So adding and now subtracting that's on top, I can erase it again. Let's try it out on the main character. Now by choosing which layer I paint on, doesn't matter which color I'm using. I think drawing is important. We should probably continue doing it. But doing complete hand-drawn shading on every single frame can be a little bit too time-consuming. Meanwhile, using the generated effect is just too noticeable. I think this might be a happy middle ground where the generated look gets you like 80% of the way there, and then you're just sort of smashing through each frame, like doing general little touch-ups. The fact that it also gives you the flexibility of just adding like brand new detail in the middle of shapes that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do at all, I think is pretty cool. And still being node-based means you can swap out the color scale with whatever you want and make all sorts of interesting highlights and shadows. So I really hope you find that useful and it gives you some interesting ideas. And yeah, of course, I did accidentally rig this guy as well. The working file for that is on the Patreon if you want to tinker with it. Pretty basic stuff, basically just a swinging deformer arm, but the weighted legs on a Quake is pretty funny. By the way, speaking of modifying it, you might have seen the screenshot earlier where I got a little bit carried away and it got a bit ridiculous. Should I finish this? Like, it's pretty interesting. It's got shadows and highlights built in where you can sort of like swing the angle around. And rather than needing to choose different layers to paint on, it all operates on different colors. So by using this like patching palette, it kind of just, yeah, what do you reckon? Meanwhile, I do have some other really interesting prototypes coming down the pipeline to do with this topic. Like this experiment getting height maps working, which is pretty neat. And a bit of a recent favorite, this anime shading filter. You've seen that technique in the Japanese pipeline where all of the shade tones are drawn with these placeholder colors. And why not make a filter for that? So that's a thing. So if the next one of those is out, there it is. If not, here's a link back to that old one I mentioned to brush up on the basics. And yeah, I know I've been gone a little while. So if you made it this far, you are well within your right to be making an, oh my God, he found his password joke. But my goodness, there has been a lot happening. So stick around. I can't wait to tell you everything that's been going on.